Hi guys, this is Adam Atkinson and this is Contest Prep University. Today is going to be a special one because today is for coaches only, and what me and Laurin are going to talk about is something that I'm not sure that has been covered online yet, is just being a relationship and being a coach. It can be difficult. We're both busy people. And what we wanted to do is just kind of share some tips, share some experiences, and kind of talk about how we make our relationships successful. So,
Thank you so much for having me on, Adam. I really appreciate it.
absolutely. One question I wanted to ask, were you single when you first started coaching and now Ryan has came along into the relationship, or were you guys together prior?
So I am probably the worst relationship person. We've been together. I'm like, how long has it been? It was 6 years this year, I believe. Like this summer, it was 6 years. So if I'm putting the math together right, I probably started coaching around the time that we got together. I don't remember like an official date of my first client versus dating him and kind of whatever, but it was around that same time, kind of middle of 2013 is when I started coaching, and that's when we started dating as well. But when I started coaching, it was like I had one client and then I had like three, so it wasn't really like I was a coach for a long time. Like I was like, oh, I coach a few people and I'm a student. Like that was my main thing, student and athlete, because I was still an undergrad at this point. So yes, Ryan was in the picture, but like what I do now is vastly different than what I was doing then. I mean, both of our lives, of course, have changed tremendously.
Yeah.
In that amount of time. But yeah, so I should probably know these stats a little better, but we are just not, we never celebrate anniversaries. Like we're like, what date? We don't really know. It's in May.
That's awesome. Steve, me and you are very similar where there was an evolution to my coaching. So I had started coaching back in 2002 and me and Sarah got married in 2008. And about that time is when I started coaching physique competitors. So she didn't really sign up for this. And, it was completely different how I was coaching before. And then you had the, bodybuilding and figure era. And then all of a sudden, physique and bikini came out. And then it went a whole different direction. Yep. So for a lot of our coaches now, personal growth is so fast in this business now. I think with Instagram, where we started with 1 or 2 clients, people can start with 10 right off the bat just by posting the right transformation photo. So to help our audience now, I do think that trust is probably just the biggest thing with this, trusting your partner. And trust obviously takes time, and it's variable on people's actions. So I think one of the things that I can speak for my wife, I've never given her reason to not trust me. And that's something that has, kept my business strong. And I've never given my athletes a reason to not trust me either. So coaches will keep a good name over the length of time by always walking the line.
Yeah, I think that's really important for male coaches to female athletes. Obviously, we've all heard the horror stories, and, male coaches to, significant others as well, right? So I do think that there are people who have, either dated their clients or, maybe just some bad things have happened. I don't think that's everyone by any means, but stuff like that does happen. It's life, right? So you have to not give people a reason, really. And any coach that I've ever worked with, or any just like professional person in general, like I would never feel uncomfortable sending them an update picture, right? Because they've given me a reason for them to be trustworthy. And now, again, update photos, in my opinion, aren't very suggestive. Like somebody looks half dead, half starved. Like that is not attractive, in my opinion, like on any stretch of the imagination. I could see how somebody who's not in our industry might be like, oh, you're looking at girls in bikinis all day. That's pretty suggestive. I promise, if you're a coach, like you're not looking generally at your clients like that, because it's like, it's just a different thing, especially with the posing, right? It's not like, ooh, this is a racy photo. It's just like, oh, there it is. Like, let's look at her glutes. Like, let's check it. I know it sounds crazy to people on the outside, but really when you're looking at it from like a subjective eye, it's not like that.
Yeah.
I can understand from a as a male coach, you know, having a wife or a girlfriend, how that could be if you're, you know, not a trustworthy person in your relationship, how that could be an issue no matter what.
Absolutely. And I think me and you have probably seen people who have dated a client and ended up in a marriage and was successful. And that was something I wanted to lightly touch base on, because I think if true love does happen in that scenario, which it could happen anywhere, I would say you just have to go about the right way. And you would hope that that person doesn't have a track record of dating multiple clients, that this is something they were very patient about. And they're like, I'm very, you know, timid to even ask this person, but I also can't help but to feel a certain way.
Yeah, not trying to, like, obviously everybody has different situations. So sometimes things like that can happen. But you basically don't want to give off a creepy vibe or like or making remarks that are maybe like somewhat suggestive on the coach's end. Like, those are obviously things not to do. Now, you still need to be critical. You still need to be like, hey, your glutes look like this. Hey, this needs to come in. Like, you can't shy away from the realities of coaching a female. But yeah, so for me, obviously female to female, not really an issue.
Right.
And even, you know, female to male, like, I mean, it's just different. You know, even if I do coach men, it's just a totally different thing versus a male coaching a female. But for me, I do travel a lot, and I generally travel with males, and I generally am hanging out with a group of males pretty much wherever I go. So for the same thing goes for the trust there. You know, with any relationship, you have to have trust, right? And people ask all the time, like, oh, you know, like, you're going here. Oh, Ryan doesn't go everywhere with me, just based on our schedules, based on his time, and based on a lot of things he doesn't necessarily want to go to. You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's certain stuff that he loves going to, and then there's other things that he's like, I could really care less about that. So he's going to use his time to go to some other event that maybe I'm not even going to go to, right? So he's not with me, I would say, at every event, but there's no issue there. So I think that, again, it comes down to trust. And if I'm going somewhere and I'm hanging out with guys, or, you know, sharing an Airbnb or doing whatever, it's all people that I'm actually friends with. And it's not like these just like random people that I'm going to obviously stay in a house with, but I am friends with them. And there's never been any issues, you know, between us with that. Like, that would just be so crazy to think. And I think that when you are maybe, again, it's understandable if this is a new relationship and this is all new and everybody's traveling and around opposite sex and this and that and whatever. But if you're somebody who, like, you need to be comfortable with the person that you're dating regardless of where they're at, because in reality, like, we all know, like, somebody's going to cheat on you or do something. It could be literally in your own house. It could be in your own backyard. Like, it does not matter where the person is. So if you're being super, you know, non-trustworthy and judgmental and, you know, worried about it, then the person's going to be like, what is going on? Like, I haven't even done anything, or, you know, whatever. So I've seen that go the other way too, you know, like, and it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in some sense. So, you know, you need to trust your partner, and you need to, you know, that needs to start at home, no matter who you're around, no matter what you're doing. And then that way, if somebody is traveling a lot, or is with the opposite sex, or is looking at bikini check-in photos, then it's no factor.
Right. I'm glad you brought up travel, because that brought me into invitation. And I think how you ask your partner, saying, especially from a male being married to a female, asking my wife and saying, you can go versus would you like to go, definitely mean two different things. So, you know, letting her know, like, I would like you to go if you would want to. And oftentimes, my wife could care less to go. But if it's in Vegas or Florida or anywhere warm, she's definitely going to be along for the trip.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, Ryan's not going to go to, you know, the national shows that we're going to, right? But I might stay with, you know, me and Paul stay together a lot. Me and Joe stay together a lot. We're all going to split a place, right? Like, not a hotel. We're going to split an Airbnb that has our own separate rooms. We're all staying together. But, like, Ryan's not like, oh, I want to go to junior nationals. He doesn't care. Yeah. Honestly, the only reason he's ever wanted to go up there is just because we're friends with Ed Cohn, who obviously lives in Chicago. But the last time we were even going to do that, he wasn't there. So Ryan's like, there's no reason for me to go to this event. You know, so, like, there's certain things that it's just, like, silly. Like, why, you know, somebody doesn't always have to go, but that doesn't mean that you as the coach shouldn't go, right? Like
Right.
whether it's a client event or it's an expo. For example, like Ryan loves the Arnold because it's, the Arnold has a ton of great powerlifting gyms. It's just like a really cool kind of city as far as that kind of stuff goes. Like he's a powerlifter, so he loves all that. It's just a pretty good time, like the people that are there. Olympia doesn't really care. Like he likes Vegas, but going to the Olympia is just not really like his thing, because he doesn't really care as much about bodybuilding. The expo is completely changed now. So for him, it's kind of like, oh, I'll go to the Arnold, but like, I'm not going to go to the Olympia.
Yeah. Do you find when he goes, your clients are just so amped they came?
Oh yeah. Everybody loves Ryan. It's honestly a joke no matter where I go, because people always just want to see him instead of me. And I'm like, all right, I'm just chop liver over here. Because a lot of people know him, or they've met him, or they've just, talked to him online. So, whether it's the clients, like they all love him. I work with First Form, and, he's been up there a few times and everybody loves him there. So they're always like, where's Ryan? I'm like, oh, I'm here, but nobody cares. Everybody wants to see Ryan.
My wife, when she goes to events, I always say it's like the first woman of the White House showed up. And my clients could care less about me, being there.
I guess you've talked to me every week. It's fine. That's why. Like,
now I know you're extremely busy. And so how do you guys work on time management together?
Yeah, that's what's changed the most. So obviously when I first started coaching, when I was in school and doing things like that was way different, and it was pretty small. And I would say that pretty much I kept the business very small and very manageable while I was in my undergrad and grad school. Didn't really kind of take things full time per se until I graduated. So I was about 3 years into our relationship. So now it's been about 3.5 years of us doing that. And over the course of those, 3.5 years, I've gotten, of course, exponentially busier, had a lot more opportunities, and I've traveled the past 2 years. I mean, so much. So, obviously there's people who travel more than me, but I have traveled a lot, and I'm trying to always go different places. And like I said, sometimes he goes, sometimes he doesn't. So really, that's kind of been the biggest thing is, well, two things. So he's a firefighter. So on days where he's gone, obviously. Well, not obviously. He works 24 hours on, 48 off. So for anybody who doesn't know, like a firefighter schedule. So basically he sleeps there, obviously, for the 24 hours. Well, sleeping if he doesn't have a call. But so he'll be gone for like a full day. And then by the time he drives, because it is a drive, it's like a 2-hour drive each way. And then he gets back. And then we have about, a day and a half together. And then he goes back. So when he's home, right? So there are certain things that I've tried to do over the years as far as like, okay, if he's not home that day or he's working, I will try and structure like a podcast, or I need to go do this or whatever, right? So then days that he is home, I do try and stay around a little bit more to see him. But actually recently, because of the traveling and whatever, like I've kind of just run into like I'm perma working, which is my fault because I can fall very easily into the like workaholic kind of thing. Like, I'll just throw together some food. I don't work out today. I'll just work all day and just do shit. And so it's very easy to do that when it is your own business and you are trying to grow and you do work from home. So it's kind of hard to turn that off switch as far as I'm working, I'm not working. So sometimes, and I don't know if you ever experienced this either, or if you even work from home, I'm not sure. Sometimes like I'll work and then I'll like maybe see him for a little bit, and then I'll work and then I'll see him a little bit. But then it really feels like I haven't really seen him all day, but I have, and it's like distracted me, and you know what I mean? So we actually had a conversation about this the other day, which I was like, oh, this is so great. We're going to be on the podcast about this, kind of setting aside almost like a scheduling in time to do stuff together, which I know sounds kind of crazy to some people, but it's really not, because if I need to be busy and working, if we had normal jobs, this would be how it is, right? Like we're both away, we're both doing our thing, and then we come home and we're together. But for us, it's very all over the place. He's gone or here. I may be traveling, maybe I'm back. I'm working, and then I can work all day, so we kind of have to literally set aside, okay, when are we going to do stuff together? We're going to try to train maybe together, once a week. We're going to try to, go somewhere, or just literally just, hey, let's watch a movie this night or something like that.
Yeah.
And you literally have to schedule that in. And I can't remember who said this. I was at an event and the guy was presenting, and he was a business owner and very busy. And he literally talked about kind of this, like scheduling in his family time. And he's like, when I'm at work, like my wife and I do not text, like unless there's an emergency or something, like we do not talk all day. And then, so when I'm working. And then when I come home, there's a certain time that I'm home with my sons, and then they go to bed, and then I'm with my wife for whatever time. And at first I was kind of like, whoa, you're like scheduling your wife in. But then it's like, well, that actually makes sense. So when you're gone all day and you actually have time, you have stuff to talk about when you're together. And then you actually feel like you had quality time. So it's something that we're still kind of in the process of figuring out, because like I said, with the travel, it's weird because I can always just be like, well, I have more work to do. And then you feel like you're perma doing stuff. So trying to set aside a schedule for like, hey, these days this week, let's, really commit to doing this at this time.
Absolutely. We're very scheduled like that as well. And, I'm sure every relationship gets more free time than others. But Sarah really enjoys that time that I will set aside for her. Also, I will say that it's helped me. There can be some procrastination with our work. Some things seem like work, and like sometimes just checking Instagram is not true work. So I've actually adopted a habit where I have a hourglass and I flip it and I work until the sand runs out on that thing. I might take a 15-minute break and then I'm back at it. But having a plan and just knowing that I have to make time for her at the end of the day, no matter what, is huge for me. Like, to bring my focus to the office every day, because we're both very self-starting with our businesses. So, we could sleep in an extra hour, but, you do that long enough as a coach, you realize that you can't do that because it does not help you.
No. And I mean, there's that temptation is there. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. There's definitely days where I'm just wiped out and you're like, whatever, another hour, or, whatever. And then, you always feel behind and you always feel like you're catching up. And I'm a morning person, so I'm better when I wake up in the morning. Only thing that kicks my ass is with the traveling. If I do travel out west, when I come back, it just wrecks me. But, kind of is what it is. And that's the reality of going out west a lot. So have to really, you have to set some kind of schedule for yourself, and having, kind of hard stop times too. And that's something that I got pretty good at for a while, because I started structuring updates a certain way, and I started getting really good at that. And then it was pretty good there for a while. And then now that I've kind of taken on new roles within the business, it is different. So, now it's not only just like managing updates. Now I have to manage the coaches, manage the business side of things, make sure things are organized. I have to put together, travel stuff. I have to pack, unpack, actually be gone. I have to, social media is a whole job in itself. I mean, it literally is. And now it doesn't have to be the sole focus of what I'm doing, of course, but that is something that I have to put into the day. So those are all these different facets, podcasting, whatever it is. So I have to put that in. So now it's managing a lot more than just the updates. And that used to be really easy for me to say, okay, send this stuff in by this time. I'm going to work until X and then we're good to go. Now it's kind of all just bled into this whole thing. And, so just really having stop times, or even if it's not even just necessarily a stop time, but more of like I'm going to spend this X time with, my person. And it could look different for everyone. So I know for me, like I can feel kind of guilty sometimes, like if it's like early, right? Which is so stupid. Like it doesn't matter. I literally make my own schedule. But like, for example, like if I'm going to do something at night, right? Like I need to get on some calls at night, I might only be able to see Rye earlier, right? But I need to be able to schedule that in, like, hey, from like 5 to 7, we can, hang out. And then even though that might seem early to some people because they're just getting off work, then that's our time, because then at 7:30 I get on calls, right? Or whatever it might be. Yeah. So it can kind of look different to everybody, and it might look different every day too, because there's sometimes where we train at home, sometimes we train at the different gyms, sometimes we go all over, so there's all different stuff they have to factor in. And that's just the one thing that when you are with somebody else, especially if you have a variable schedule, and since we both have variable schedules, it oscillates a lot.
Yeah. A good example of something me and Sarah did. She's great with interior design, and she wanted to pick out things for the house. And I said, if you can drive, I would love to go and just like watch you in your element. But if I can hammer out some emails on a hotspot and you get us there, that would be phenomenal. And that was just a compromise we were able to make. And I will say, and you'll probably say this too, sometimes I feel like if I'm not in my office, my emails just aren't as good if they're in a different environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's better to just not even do anything then, right? And just kind of be in, or maybe, you know, like check in, like messages or little work. Cause I always feel like there's different work. Like my brain operates different ways at different times. So like, it is very hard for me to do updates later in the day, which is why I structure them the way that I do. So I mean, obviously there's sometimes where extenuating circumstances and you have to, but pretty much when I can control it, things are coming in the night before and early in the morning so that I can work for the morning to the afternoon on that. And then anything later when I'm done is kind of a different brain of working, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's really important. And the office thing's interesting. So I have, you know, a home office. But over the years, I feel this weird pull because I do travel a lot and I structure a lot of my travel Thursday to Sunday. So then the days that I'm home, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, are my heaviest update days. So when I'm there, like I just do updates. So I don't really have time to like drive somewhere, be somewhere, because I have to like do shit. But then at the same time, it's distracting because then I'm like, oh, well, I need to unpack and do the laundry and then Rye's here and I want to see it. And so I know, and I've thought about, okay, maybe I should just do the hipster thing and go to like a coffee shop every once in a while.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I feel kind of silly getting a full blown office when I'm gone a lot of times, like half the month. But, you know, that might be a viable option. So it's something that I've thought of recently. And I'm like, God, I'm going to be like that person who's going to a coffee shop to work. But, you know, it might actually be helpful.
It can be helpful. It can really keep you in the zone sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Hourglass is cool. I have a little timer thing on my desk. It's like, it's like a cube. There's like a 15, a 30, a 5, and a 10-minute like intervals.
Yeah.
So you can like set it as like an alarm, you know, so because we can get a lot done when we're not distracted, but there's just so many distractions with everything, or at least I'm a distracted squirrel. So
same here.
It's so easy. Like literally anything could happen. And I'm like, what? And then my brain is just off. And so sometimes you just got to say like you said with the hourglass, I'm sitting down for 15 minutes to do this. And then this buzzer is going to go off and that's going to be annoying as hell. And then I'm going to have to do something else.
Yeah. A lot of it's learning your own time management tactics. And sure. I used to do this on the phone and it just didn't work for me because when that timer went off and I had, you know, maybe 5 text messages, it then became, I'm doing that. And even though some of those were important, then I might hit the Instagram icon. And so I time block kind of when I check my phone, just like I do emails and anything else.
Yeah, it's tough. And you feel bad because you like don't want to say like no to people or you don't want to ignore people. But then at the same time, it's like, you know, otherwise like something that could take an hour might take 2 hours. Right. And I mentioned, you know, waking up earlier, I don't wake up super early by any means, but and kind of getting a head start. And that just works for me, even though I would love to just sleep in and just be lazy. But if I'm being realistic, I wake up and I can work right away. Like doesn't matter what time it is. It could be 4 a.m. and I'm ready to go. I might need a nap later, but like I'm fine. You know, some people like wake up, they need like an hour to I don't need that. Wake up, cup of coffee, wash your face, get shit ready. I'm good. Like, so for me, I know that. And I know that like, as soon as I get up, I can start working, but I start to fade later. So I know like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this kind of stuff later. And that's why I set it up. But people listening might be the total opposite. I know plenty of coaches and it's crazy to me, but they are literally they're night owls, you know, and they're like just total, you know, I worked with Cliff Wilson last year and he is, you know, he's changed a little bit with his daughter, you know, he kind of has to, but I mean, this guy would love to, you know, go to sleep at 3 a.m. Like that would be like his ideal thing. And he would just work, you know, later parts. And John Gorman, another really good friend of mine, it feels like he gets the best work done at 10 to 2. And I'm like, hell no. Like that is like, I'm either sleeping or I'm doing dumb shit on my phone. Like there's not like, nothing good is happening at that time for me.
I do well at night, actually, funny enough.
Really? Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Me and Cliff actually both talked about that at UNglamorous. So
yeah. I remember because I would send my stuff really early because, you know, like I said, I like getting up early, but then as you prep, at least for me, I can't ever sleep in once I get to a certain point. I mean, there's just so much, you're just so sympathetic. And so I would just send stuff early and then I'd be like waiting all day and I'd be like done with my workout. I remember one time he got back to me and I had just finished my cardio And he was like, hey, can you add 15 minutes? I'm like, fuck. And I was like ready to walk out of the gym. I'm like, back on the gym. I was like, oh, you're lucky I read this. But it's just funny because it's not like he was ignoring me. That's just like, I know his times of when he checks stuff. So
yeah,
cracks me up. But everybody's different. So if you're listening and you're like, no, I am not a morning person. So, hey, sleep in. And then, so for me, if I'm waking up early and Ryan is off, he's going to try to sleep in just because of his schedule, right? Because he might have disrupted sleep the night before and getting up early the other day. So he has like one day basically to sleep in. So like on that day, like I'm going to try to wake up as quietly as possible and then just get out of the room because, not trying to wake him up. So for me, I'm better. And then I'm alone for like, 2 hours, maybe just working, no distractions. That's better for me. But for somebody listening, your time might be your significant other goes to sleep. And now you can just hammer out 2 more hours of something where you're just like completely distraction free.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one more final question. Have you found that your travel has almost made you guys closer because you just appreciate the time together that much more?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. So when we started dating, and I don't want to say we've always been distance, but like kind of. So literally even when he asked me out, we were in separate cities. And I mean, only a few hours. So it wasn't like, light years apart, but it was like, I'm not driving 7 hours just to go, So we're from all different parts of Florida. So like there's been parts where like I've been in South Florida and he was in Tallahassee. There was parts where we switched that. There was parts where I was in Tampa and he was in South Florida, and just basically with school and, his schooling and then, careers and finding jobs and things like that. So there was a period of time where for pretty much most of our relationship, we were off and on living together, not because of dating, but just because of where we were. So we were kind of always used to that, to be super honest. So that hasn't really changed too drastically. And we're both very independent people, and we always have been. So, obviously our relationship is great and we complement each other, but we very much are fully self-sufficient and emotionally independent as well. So there's not things that like, we miss each other when we're apart, but it's not like, oh, I can't do these things or he can't do these things when we're not together. Like we're just not, so I think that it's important for people. If you are going to be somebody who travels, like you need to be able to handle all your shit on your own, and the other person needs to as well. Because then there's going to be some kind of guilt and some kind of resentment going on. If you're like, well, why can't you just handle your stuff while I'm gone? The other person's like, well, what the hell? I never had to, or, whatever. So everybody's a little bit different with the relationship, but we've both been very independent for the whole time. And we've really been off and on living places. And then finally, a few years back in 2016, when things started to pick up, we eventually, maybe like 2017, I don't really know. I can't, years, time, all goes together. We've been living together kind of full time instead of all this like bouncing back and forth. And then, we did buy a house a year and a half ago. And so we've been living together really for almost the whole time, but then it's just been different places. Like, I'm either traveling, he's traveling now. And so it works out and we're both busy. So I think it's cool too, because if one person, like we're not just, not doing anything. And yeah, I think it does help a relationship when you have things to talk about and you have things that are going on in your life. I think that if people are never trying to do things, whether it's together or separate, then things just get very kind of lackluster almost.
Mm-hmm.
You start to wonder like, oh, like what are things different? It's like, no, you guys just haven't been doing stuff. And when a lot of people start dating, they are, maybe doing things together and that kind of stops. So I think it works out actually with the travel, and it does make you kind of appreciate your relationship when you are together. But making sure that it's strong when you are together is key, and not just traveling because things aren't going well. That's a huge distinction. Going on the road because like you're unhappy with somebody is a recipe for disaster, and that is not going to last very long.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I've seen cases where people are guarding people versus, actually wanting to be with them. And
yes.
That's sad because like you said, it could be in your backyard or in your house and you never know.
Exactly. And everybody has their shit, and that person might just be using that as an outlet and they don't really realize it. Ultimately, I think is what happens. And then some people might realize that like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to try to avoid this. But that will always bite you in the ass. So
right.
Having a solid relationship at home, and kind of to start is really key. And then, once you decide to either take it on the road or just be like, hey, like, and sometimes again, I have a bad habit of just working a lot and not really turning off. So, you have to kind of have that communication. And we actually had a conversation, like I said, a few, 2 weeks ago. And Rye was like, I feel like you're always doing this. And then it's not like, there's no real time. And, typically men aren't really as good as communicating things like that. Like, I'm like, why didn't you just tell me? Like, I can't read your mind. Right. So, having that conversation is important, because then if you don't, then that person will eventually start to resent you. Of course. And that's actually a trait that a lot of agreeable people typically have resentment. And Ryan is very disagreeable, so there's no resentment there. Not saying that, but there is, if you look at personality traits, that there's the big five, and that's one of them. And typically people who are very agreeable, even if they want to say no and they say yes, over time that builds up. And if you ever see people who are like, yeah, everything was always great, and then all of a sudden they just flew up the handle, well, that's what that was. Somebody had built up resentment around something. So you have to, of course, be tactful about how you say things to your significant other, but be open with communication. Otherwise, no matter if you're home every day or you're traveling or you're working a lot or working a little, it's not going to be good. Right.
Absolutely. I think we covered some great topics, and, this will be great for anyone who's just getting into coaching. These are things to consider. And, I think I'm very lucky. My wife is a saint, and I can't thank her enough. And I'm sure you can't thank Ryan enough for just being so flexible and supportive in what we do.
Yeah, for sure. And we have, I don't know if your wife is different than you as far as like how you are. So like Ryan is kind of a mirror to me. Like we share a lot of things, but he's also very different in other aspects. So I think that can be good, because if I was dating somebody who was like a workaholic psychopath like me, and just very like neurotic and always have to be doing things, then it would just be like bad. So if you're starting out and you're like, hey, well, my, significant other is different than me, that actually might be better, right? There's going to be some things that, of course, you have to communicate on, but it's not always a bad thing. And that might actually be good, right? Because then it's like, okay, I know I have these tendencies. So then he can help me kind of dial that back and say, hey, let's have a schedule where you stop working and you actually have time where we do things together, right? If he was like, no, grind, savage, millionaires, like that would be bad news, right? And then those people would have, eventually, I believe, just don't have a good relationship, because something will give, and usually it's a relationship, because then they just focus on this other stuff. So if you are getting into this and somebody's not doing what you're doing, or I hear this all the time too, oh, my significant other like doesn't do this fitness stuff. That's fine. I know a lot of people actually who have very different lives and it works. You just have to make sure that the other person obviously respects what you're doing and isn't like making fun of you or degrading what you're doing. So like, perfect example, I have a friend who's a coach, and then her husband literally, I don't even think like works out. Like, maybe occasionally for like health, but like barely works out, has a totally different career outside of this, like wants nothing to do with it, never goes to events with her, whatever. And they have a great relationship because he understands what she does, she understands what he does, and they share other things together. So it's totally possible to have that. You just have to know, again, how to communicate, like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing, and I need you to respect that. And then if I'm kind of going over these boundaries, call me on my shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And my wife's definitely a polar opposite of me. She likes to have fun, and work is the last thing on her mind. So she really balances me out. And honestly, I find when I make that time for her, I'm just that much more efficient when I go back to work. It's very refreshing. Yeah. It's something that's taken time for me to do.
Oh yeah, slowly learning all that, but
yes. Well, I think this was a great episode. We'll definitely have to do more of these together. So, yes, Laurin, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys again on our next episode of Contest Prep University.
Thank you.